What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Performance Playbook podcast. Once again, that's a mouthful. And we've got part two, which you guys don't know about, but we've got Anita Alvarez back on the podcast, even though you guys have not seen it. Anita, welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. It's like a part 1B since they didn't get to see part 1A, I guess.
Yeah, the debacle there was Riverside decided to just fall apart on us, and our audio just took a walk. So we are running this again, but um, before I get into your exciting news and everything that went down for you guys in Doha, you're gonna have to go part two on explaining who and what you do, who you are and what you do. So if you can, give us a nice little short spiel.
Yeah, so my name's Anita Alvarez. I'm an artistic swimmer for Team USA. Um, Gearing up for my third Olympics now, which is crazy to say. I competed in Rio and Tokyo, and our team just qualified for Paris, which is super exciting. Um, And yeah, I've been doing the sport my whole life. Did a lot of other sports growing up, which kind of led me to have to narrow down and pick one, and stuck with this one, and here we are. That
Mm.
was a very not very much info
Was
bio,
perfect.
but
It's
that'll
enough.
start it off.
Yeah, it's enough to where we can start picking. But with that exciting news, I kind of wanted to start off with that, and maybe you can give us a little bit of history into why Doha was so exciting for you guys. But can you explain your World Championships and your team's qualification for the Olympics?
Yeah, so in for our sport, there's the team event and the duet event. Those are the only events in the Olympics. There are other ones for world championships and everything, but for the Olympics, it's the team event, which is three events combined into one for one medal, and then the duet event, which has two events combined into one medal. And so the U.S. hasn't had a team qualify since 2008. So it's only been the duet ever since. And going into Tokyo, we were, up in that last bidding or competing for those final spots to qualify and just came short, like under a point, super close. Missed out on that qualifying, which was super heartbreaking. And I still got to go and compete with the duet, which was great, but definitely not the same experience I was hoping for with the team. So going into this quad, everything was all the energy was into let's qualify the team, let's bring the USA back. Um, and our first chance to qualify was at Pan American Games this past fall. And we had to win gold. We had to win first to get that continental spot. And, gearing up for it, we thought we had a really great chance, and everything was all the momentum was going towards that competition. And again, we came just shy of that qualifying spot. Again, less than a point, like very small miss there. So another heartbreak, and luckily we had one more chance at Doha was our final last chance qualifier, and we did it, and we did it. There were five remaining spots left. We ended up first of those five spots, and we ended up second overall with the combined scores. So super exciting, and there was a lot that went into the competition, a lot of like kind of drama and crazy like hectic stuff last minute, which added to the special moment even more, but that some people watching probably don't even know,
Yeah.
which I can get into details or I can leave those out. But yeah, so super exciting. First time in since 2008, the team is going to be there for the U.S. and also coming off of world champs with two world champ medals was an extra bonus. So
Yeah, that's wild. And I actually am very interested to hear what those are because it's funny that you say that because I didn't know if any other sport was also kind of dealing with issues like we were. Not to say that our issues were like crazy and like, monumental, but they were there. And like a lot
yeah,
of people weren't super comfortable or super happy with a lot of pieces. And so we had to like work through a lot of adversity. And those meets for the people that do know, and the intensity of those competitions, but my God, for diving at least, I mean, the prelims are for the guys, the men's 3 meter, there was like 71 people. So it was like a 5 hour prelim.
that's insane. I remember hearing that because
Oh,
Karen, our sports psych, was kind of back
yeah.
and forth with diving and artistic swimming, and she was like, "This event is like 4 or 5 hours long," and I was like, "That's just insane." And it's not
Yeah.
like you can compete and be done. It's like you're there for the whole thing, right? Like having to
Yeah,
dive throughout
it's
it.
essentially we were for the men's 3 meter. They were getting close to like one dive an hour. It's just the
Jeez.
slowest thing in the world. For me, it was like every 45 minutes in between. This was the funniest thing for me. Like in between my dives, I had two different sections between my dives. I had before I was about to go, which was like music pump up. But
Uh-huh.
after I went, because there was another like 20 plus people, I started watching a movie. And I
Oh my God.
literally, by the half of my 6 dives, like that second half of every single dive, I finished a full movie. Like it was just the
No
most
way.
absurd shit. it just took
I
it
mean,
took so
yeah,
long.
that's crazy. I mean, I guess you have to like almost disconnect like that for some of it because otherwise you can just get so up in your head. Like if you have that long to wait in between, it's like, yeah, it's good to stay focused, but also like you almost need that little separation, like take a nap, watch a movie,
Yeah.
I don't know, call a friend or
Yeah.
something, and then, you'll still have that bunch of time to get back in the zone, but
Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
can't
so
imagine.
walk us through some of the things that you guys were struggling. I don't know if it was venue, but hit me with the whole thing, the whole shebang.
Yeah. So our first event was the acro routine, and that's basically the routine where you have all the acrobatics. So we're launching people out of the water, and they're doing, your like dive flips and twists and all
Well,
that
which
stuff.
is which is wild though, because you guys don't one the fact that you guys have to launch said person up in the air, and then I feel like you guys just keep getting more and more intense with the amount of flips and twists that you're starting to add, which I'm only assuming adds to the dangerous piece of it with people getting hit and stuff like that. But we'll get into that later. But sorry, proceed.
Yeah, so this is the one where, the routine where it's the main focus is all those lifts. And there are new rules. So there's a degree of difficulty. So each lift that you do has a certain degree of difficulty, like a dive. And if you don't complete it, so if you have two twists and the girl does like one and like just short of two, you could get what's called a base mark. And that means you don't get credit for that entire element. Which when you add them up is a huge deduction. Like it could take you from fighting to a medal to not even making it into the final. So we go into this first prelim, the acro prelim, first day of the competition, like, all right, let's go, last chance qualifier, we're gonna kill it. And routine's going great. We get to the very last element, and it's like a platform. So the girl is standing on top, and she has to do like different movements. And then she does a back tuck, just a 360 off at the end. But she slipped at one point, so she started to fall, and then
Oh.
kind of like starts to stand back up, and then tries to do the flip, but she doesn't make it fully around before she hits the water. So it would be a base mark. So in training, when this happens, because it's the last element and we still have 30 seconds left of the routine, we're trained to immediately do it again. Like, don't wait until the routine's over, cool down, and then do it when we're fresh. It's like pick up right away and do it while you're still fatigued. So you get that like practice of performing the element correctly while you're fatigued. So
Mm.
we always said, like if this happens, like you say again and everyone goes and does it again. So in training, it's happened a few times and we've had to do that. And so we never think it's going to happen in competition, right? But all of a sudden, like I'm doing the next arms and I hear someone in the middle of from the team screaming again, again. And like I'm in the front, so I don't see anyone, but I just take another breath, go back under, and all of a sudden everyone is like rotating to set up the whole construction again, rises up, turns it, travels it, and then she does the whole thing over again. And
Mm.
then we finish it right at the end of the music. So it's like no one really knew what to do, and it's like the music ended and we just like came up. It's like one of those like synchro nightmares that you would never think actually happens. And then we're like, well, it's prelims, and it was cool that we tried, but also you have that little like, oh, that's a little embarrassing. But anyway, so we go out and we get our scores, and we were thinking that if the first one got a base mark, if we repeated the element and it was full credit, that we would still be able to get the full credit. So we're waiting for the scores. They're reviewing. The judges and tech controllers have never seen this before, so I think they didn't even know what to do. And then we ended up getting a base mark anyway because she didn't make it the rotation on the second time either. And
Oh.
then we also got a deduction because we added an extra element. So like we
Mm.
kind of just got like double whammy on that one instead. But it was like so cool that we did it and like we whipped that out, and everyone who was watching came up to us after and were like, that was amazing. Like no other team would ever be able to do that. Like you guys just knew what to do and set it
Mm.
up. And you can hear, my favorite thing is in the video, you can hear like um you can hear the crowd go, oh, like when she starts to fall. And then all of a sudden, like we start to rise. You can hear the swimmer say, again, again, we go under. As it starts to rise, you hear the whole crowd go, woo! Like as we start to do it again. So it was, I mean, it didn't end up being going well, but everyone was like, that was the coolest thing ever. Like, kudos to your team for doing that. Like you have a super team, basically. So luckily that was prelims. So we had finals the next day. It's like, okay, we just need to do it well. We made it to the finals in like fifth place or something. But this was our strong event, so we're hoping to do better. So going into the finals, we had one person switching. So we had an alternate switch out. Um, and we're like at the end, last call room, we're about to go. And all of a sudden the controller is like, oh, this isn't the name on the list. We need the other girl to swim, not this one. And we're like, no, 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 that was the list from yesterday. Like this is her today. And they're like, no. But then we kind of keep moving along, like everything's okay. And then we're like, Greece was right before us. We're up next. Greece is swimming. We're like in that last call. We already said bye to our coaches. We're like having our little team huddle. We already did our cheer. And we're kind of just facing each other in the circle. And I see our coaches kind of like or figuring something out with the controllers over there. And all of a sudden I see the girl who was on the list from the day before come like running in the last call room. Her hair is not done, her makeup's not done, like she's in like a plain USA suit, and she
Yikes.
comes running in, and I turn back to the team, and I'm like, because no one saw it. Yeah, I was like, guys, whatever's about to happen, we got it, it's under control, like we know what to do. And then everyone turns around and sees her come running, and they're like and then basically we're like, she has to swim or we're disqualified. And we're like, what? And they're like, yes, like Natalia, give her your suit or there's no Olympics. Like, because if we get disqualified, we're completely out.
Yeah.
So it was like we couldn't swim without a person and we couldn't swim with the other one. So we had no choice to put her in. So literally the routine before us is done actually. They quick like change their suits. We like pull her hair back and just make it work. But like her hair is just like this. And then all of a sudden we're like getting all set. We're like, it's okay. We did this yesterday, like just getting in the right mindset. And then the guy's like 10, 9, like counting down. He's like, go, go, go. Cause it's all televised. So they're like crazy about being on time with everything.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden we walk out, and I don't know if it's like this for you guys, but for finals, they had like all the lights off and like spotlights. And then as soon as we walk out, the lights go on. So like all this craziness just happened backstage. And then we walk out, and it's like you're in a nightmare when like the spotlight's on you and it's dark. And then we walk out and we had a great swim. And we ended up getting a bronze medal and yeah, are starting off in a great spot. So that was like a long story, but basically it was really cool because it was cool to see how the team shifted. You could feel some nerves kind of from warm up and everything, like especially after the day we had the day before. And it was like as soon as she came running in, there was that instant like panic, like what's going on, and then it was just like boom, everyone went into like problem solve mode, like we're gonna do this no matter what, like yes or yes. And it was such a cool feeling. Like even the girl who came in, she's 18, she's senior in high school, like super young, and she had no time to panic because she just came running from the stands. She was literally
Oh my
watching the routine
god.
before us in the stands and then had to come around. um but it was really cool. Like the team came together and it was like we all looked at each other and we knew it was going to be a great swim. Like there was no doubt. Um, and I think one thing to go with that is our coach always gives us these challenges during training. So for us, it was just so natural and so normal. It was like a normal day at practice. And she would give us these Friday challenges, she would call them. So every Friday there was some sort of challenge that day. Sometimes it would be, more physical, like a really, really difficult training. Sometimes it'd be like, I don't know, you have to like some training for just like you have to get this lift across the pool, or sometimes it's like you have to do this with, I don't know, a ball and throw it over the diving board and then go, or you show up and it's a competition, you miss the bus, you show up and you have no warm up, you have to go. Or you have to swim without your cap, or so we've done like every single possible situation that this was like nothing for us. And I thought that was pretty cool because we felt so prepared mentally for it. Obviously, physically, we were already prepared. But mentally, like a lot of other teams were like, our team, the team after us was standing there watching us, and they had like bug eyes. They looked more scared than we were. And afterwards, they were like, no way any other team would have been able to do that. Like that was just, they thought the day before was cool, but they're like, this day was even better, like what you
Yeah.
guys did. And so, yeah, that was kind of the first 2 days of the competition, too. We still had like 4 more days to compete. So it started off crazy. And then we're like, let's just have two calm, events left. But yeah.
Dude, that's wild. And it's wild
That's
to like, I think the exciting part too is like you went through adversity in the prelim and then you guys tried to make up change and again drive forward. And then boom, in the final, you get smacked in the face again. I'm kind of obsessed with that idea of your coach just kind of throwing adversity at you guys fairly consistently. Like, is that an every Friday thing, or it's like every here and there she'll throw that in on a Friday?
We used to do it every single Friday. We haven't done it as much lately just because there's so much to do.
Yeah.
Um, but it was so good for a lot of things. Obviously preparing us for this, but also when you get in the day-to-day grind, it's just like every day you're doing the same thing over and over. Like it also just, gave us something to look forward to on the end of the week when your body and everything is dead. And it also just built that teamwork inside too. Yeah, so we used to do it every single Friday. So it's like you come in Friday already knowing like, oh, what's the Friday challenge gonna be? Um, yeah.
I like that. Yeah, because I mean, we even found that, and that's maybe I'll find a way to bring that into diving. But that was kind of some of the things we were kind of dealing with was unexpected, but sometimes does happen. But you usually, when you're training just like at home, you're not going to put yourself through circumstances like this. And so, like for us, the little sprayers that hit the water, so we can like see. For the first almost till like competition day, they just didn't really work. Like you wanted to spray out into the middle of the pool, and this is like a super big pool, so it's like Budapest large. I'm pretty sure you probably saw the diving pool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's long, and so you like with a long pool like that, like it doesn't get that much like wake or it doesn't break up a lot, and so you need the sprayers to be like strong so it can actually like shoot out into the middle of the pool. And it was like a little pea stream. Like it did nothing.
Oh, no.
And I'm sitting there like the first few days, like I'm gonna die.
And
like
you're
I'm not
way up.
Yeah. And so that was one of the pieces that people weren't in love with. So they had to like try to fix that. Competition day, it was fixed for platform. Springboard was a little bit easier for that to like shoot out. And then the other one, I don't know if you saw any like pictures of Sarah and Cass, but is the funniest thing. Sorry, just of Sarah, but like she's wearing a robe and like wearing
it was freezing.
Freezing, like freezing cold. And I don't know if it was similar for you guys, but like they just would not turn on the heat. And and then like I want to call it like a jacuzzi or a hot tub, but it was just perfectly lukewarm, almost the same temperature as the water, and you're just like, this is unreal. So people are like freezing cold during this whole time.
And when you have those like you're talking about that 5-hour event, whatever, and you're doing one dive and then resting forever, I mean, that's terrible. It was cold in ours too. It was really cold at first. The pool got better, but the air was freezing. So like if you're just waiting around, getting ready, we're bundled up. We have leg warmers, robe, like jacket, parkas, like everything, because it was so cold. And I heard all the water polo said the same, divers were saying the same. So I don't know what was up with that. But.
They didn't want to turn on the heat. They had plenty of energy to do so. But yeah, it was wild. And then the other pieces that some people were starting to run through was like some divers, and this actually eventually ended up happening to me, but like divers were getting some like food poisoning and they were like not doing well. And then I don't know if you guys experienced any of that, but and then a few of us were getting sick, and I guess like food poisoning or sick. I didn't know if it was food poisoning or just sickness. And then I get to my competition day, and that night, I probably slept like 2 hours total and was just fully sick in the morning. I was like, this isn't real. Like this can't be real. And then
No.
like make it through the prelim, and then the trying to sleep that night just as bad. And then you get there and you're like, all right, I have the semi and the final today. And it was like the semi, I was like scorching hot, which was kind of nice because it was cold. And then for the final, which was faster, thankfully, I was freezing. I was like, this is just like the worst possible scenario I could be in. But like, you're just shooting for, it's not like you want to win, but like in a situation like that for that long and that condensed, you're like, I just need to get the Olympic spot and then we can go from there. And so it's like
Right, right.
once you got out of the semi, because like once you got into the semi, you're like, I'm pretty sure I have a spot. But once you're in the final, you're
Mhm.
like, I for sure have a spot. I need to do one dive and I can scratch, and I technically competed, and then
Okay.
I would for sure have the
You'll still
spot.
get that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so that was kind of like the adversity some people were dealing with outside of it, like bad sprayers, cold, and then just the mass
Getting
amount of
sick.
people. Yeah, it's just,
Yeah, must be. I wonder if it's just from being so cold too, that people were actually getting sick, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, I could have. But yeah, it was a wild experience. I feel like, and maybe you've experienced this with like Olympic qualifiers, there's always something. Like there is, for some
Always.
reason, it's always that competition just has some debauchery that's always happening, and it's just wild stuff. And like I could go on for far too long about world champs. But have you guys experienced stuff like
Yeah.
that at most of them?
Yeah. I think I'm trying to think now. All of my so our first Olympic qualifier was in Rio at that pool. It was like raining and storming. Nothing like crazy, but that was like the big thing. Tokyo qualifier was the one when the team missed out,
Mm.
on qualifying. Um, I had the first time I passed out in the pool was at the Olympic qualifier, and I almost like I couldn't swim in the final. We had the alternate swim. Um, and then this one obviously crazy just in Doha. So yeah, it's never smooth sailing,
Yeah.
which I guess is the point, but
Yeah. I think that's the interesting part, that especially when you have like newer teammates, and you probably have the same thing telling these younger teammates, but it's Scott Doney always said this line, like, pray for rain. Like there's always going to be something that's going to happen, but if you, like you guys, if you can be ready for it, and other people are just going to freak out, break down, and fall apart, and you can just like push through whatever you're dealing with, then it's like, hey, that's how, sometimes that's how like that's literally like the 2000 Olympics for Greece. Greece won the 2000
Mm.
Olympics, and it was like the least likely team to win, but
Oh,
like China failed to dive, US
oh wow.
died. It was just the most wild thing, and all they had to do is just land on your head. That's it, and you win the
Just
Olympics. And boom,
that's
right there. So it's like the whole concept of just like be ready for all of these
anything.
little, yeah, intricacies of, water, it's freezing, the hot tub sucks, you have half the team getting sick. Do you feel like now that you're in that older role, have you played that part for your team?
Um, I guess a little bit. I think also though, like kind of thinking about that is besides the Friday challenges that our coach sets up for us, like we don't have the most ideal training conditions. We haven't for some time. Like, we haven't always had a lot of funding, which a lot of sports don't.
Yeah.
But, we have a pool that the heater will break all the time. We're outside in California. It'll be like monsoon, bomb cyclone, whatever, and we're still out there training. We'll have like this tiny little fishbowl part of the pool because the master swimming is taking up, the rest of the pool. So like we've also been like just had to have been put in every other situation possible too, where it's also prepared us for like when we get there, like, the pool could be freezing cold, the pool could be hot tub temperature, and we'll be fine. It
Mm,
could be, raining inside, it could be whatever else, and we'll be fine. We could have like this much pool, we could have a huge pool, we could like literally anything. And I know, like, we all know that we could do it. And it's like not even something that would stress us out, I guess,
yeah.
which has been pretty cool. So I don't even have to feel like I have to like share that much with the team. I feel like we all just experience it every day too, that it's just in the nature of the culture of the team
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, which is it's probably like a little bit of a blessing in disguise that it's not perfect, because not
Right.
perfect has created like resiliency for like the team and what you guys can push through. I did want to touch on this topic because this is kind of random, but I was reading this book, and I don't know if you've read this. It's a great book. So if athletes are listening, give this book a read. It's like 120 pages, so it's super quick. But
Oh, nice.
it's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. Have you heard of it?
Oh, I haven't.
Oh, beautiful.
Who's it?
It's
Who wrote it? Well, I
oof.
gotta write this down.
Chop Wood, Carry Water. I don't remember the author. I
That's
think
okay.
it potentially starts with an E, but he goes over it's such a beautiful philosophy and so many things that they touch upon in this book. I couldn't recommend this enough for people. But there's a consistency, and it's about doing consistent things over and over and over. And so like the theme of this, and without trying to spoil too much, is he has to chop wood and carry water every single day. Every single day. And he first gets there and he's confused. This is annoying. I don't want to do this. And I think the piece that they're trying to put out there is like even the little things done perfectly over a very long period of time can produce greatness. And
Yeah.
like that is essentially, to an extent, our sport, right? Like I have to do little basic dives and lineups consistently every single day to make that mechanical, so I don't even have to think about it. And I feel like you guys, right, you're in the pool going over these things, let it be, the routine or your stretching or the strength training, and it's like all this repetition.
Mm-hmm.
My point being here is there's a monotony to perfection. There's a monotonous nature to doing things perfectly because it takes so long. And I think this is just kind of an interesting question in my mind, but like, how do you get through the monotonous nature of the perfection of your sport?
Oof. That's tough. I mean, I think it like changes at different times too. It's like, because it does get hard. It's so true. Like it is just the same thing over and over, and it's literally you just go and repeat. I mean, even the lifeguards and the people who swim at the pool are like, "Are you gonna get new music anytime soon?" Like they know our routine by heart because we do it so much. Um, But I think for me, definitely like having a team around and like being able to keep things light and just keep a touch of humor in there, like is huge for me. Yeah, I think when I was younger, I was so serious and I was like, oh, I have to be so focused and serious all the time. And like, yes, you need to be focused and like you can work hard and be focused and still like laugh every couple minutes or like, have a funny joke or like a quick like side conversation as you're getting water. Like it's definitely possible to do that. And I think I mean, it's different if you're in like an individual sport where you're really training by yourself, but even in that case, if you have your coach there and you can have a good relationship with your coach where you can still kind of joke about things and still work hard obviously, but like keep things light and enjoyable, because otherwise it's like, what are you doing this for? It's just going to be miserable. And like, yes, it's your passion, so why not enjoy all of it. And yeah, I think humor has been a huge thing for me that I've found over the years has helped. um and then other things too, like like I mentioned, the Friday challenges and things like that, which obviously were set up by our coach, but having things to change up the routine a little bit, or like just change minor things. Sometimes like you're gonna have to do the same stuff, the same movements, the same basic drills. Like everything comes down to those basics that you have to go back to. So as however good of a swimmer or diver you get, you're always gonna have to do those same things that you learn your first year in the sport, right? But finding ways to tweak things a little bit or add like, I don't know, add something new, or just like a little piece of it, make it a little different, can just spice it up a little bit too. So
Yeah. I had
yeah.
I had a feeling that was going to be your answer, because I feel like at some point when you meet some of the best athletes, when you watch them train, you can see like inklings of play. And like you even
Hmm.
see this in nature too, right? Like there'll be two dogs and they'll be wrestling and biting each other. And like you're simulating if something were to actually happen, like how you would actually address that. Obviously the intensity would heighten, but all the pieces are there. All the mechanics of fighting are right there. And so it's like, okay, I'll take my example. Like, we're diving at practice, we're all talking shit, yelling at each other, and like playing with each other, especially while people are going, we'll try to get in each other's head. Like, you're not focusing right now. Are you focusing? And like, you'll be standing there like, oh my God, am I focusing? Like, we'll just play. And I think that's so important, because if you can implement, pieces of play like you guys did on Friday and switch things up and screwed with people, when you actually get to a situation where you're like, oh my God, this is like high intensity. Well, we already played through this, funny enough, to where it's like, you either have to throw a ball or whatever, you didn't warm up, which is like, I think is so interesting, because, again, you read through this book and you see consistent traits of greatness everywhere. Right. And so it's like, this guy's trying to become a samurai archer. And so he has to chop wood and carry water to like allow himself to consistently live in this area so they can keep training. But it's like the Mr. Miyagi thing, right? Like, without knowing it, you're training. And I think that would be the goal, is to get through monotonous training with, the beautiful aspect of actually learning while you do it. And so I was like, I could see it. Obviously, I heard you already say the Friday stuff, but it's play makes sense. And if you can break up these things and actually enjoy what you're doing, you're going to produce better outcomes consistently on a long-term basis, regardless. Because I feel like, and I don't know, and maybe you can kind of explain it if you've ever been through a situation to where, and I've done this too, where you're too intense for too long, and you think it's going to produce a better outcome, and all it does is make you psychotically depressed and just not, you just hate your life. Have you run through a period like that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually thinking about it right now, because the first time I started competing in the solo event on the national team, which was back in 2019, um, there you're by yourself. So you literally you're just putting all this pressure on yourself to be perfect all the time. You're doing the same moves over and over. Every time you watch a video, you're like, oh, it's not good enough. Oh, it's not good enough, which is great. It's great to have, it's better than if I were to say, not better, but you don't want to be thinking it's all perfect all the time either, but there has to be that balance, and being able to find the way to still like enjoy it and keep it light too. Like, okay, yeah, that's not perfect, but I don't need to like tear myself down about it. Like, let's work on it. Let's do whatever. And I think when I first started doing solo, I was so in my head. I was so like, everything I did wasn't good enough, and it made the whole experience much harder too. When I got to competitions, I was like so stressed before competing. I would just like be crying. Like, I couldn't control it, but I was just like crying because I was so nervous, and I put so much pressure on myself to be perfect when, it was my first time doing a solo. It wasn't, nothing was going to happen if I didn't have a perfect swim. And now I've just started up a solo again after coming back from Doha, to compete at the World Cups. First time since 2022. And I feel like I have a very different approach now. And I've been enjoying the whole process of it with my coach. I still get like frustrated sometimes and like, oh, like I need to do better. But I think there's still like, I've found the balance, and have been able to kind of add the lightness there, and not put so much pressure, and just enjoy the whole process too. Because like you said, we can get so intense and so hard on ourselves, but it's not going to produce better results, and you're going to be miserable in the process. It's like, there's literally no win there. And there's a limit. Of course, there's a line you can cross of, being too carefree and whatever, just recreational. But obviously, like, as elite athletes, we're not really going to get to that point. So being able to have a little bit of lightness in there, you're going to perform better because you're enjoying what you're doing way better. And again, you're going to enjoy it. So it's like, what could be better?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of reminds me before 2021 trials, and this was kind of like before COVID even happened. And I was meeting with a sports psych, and it was one of the first meetings we had, and he was so incredible. He's sadly left Purdue, and I worked with him over my collegiate career towards the end, before I found out how helpful having a sports psychologist is.
Uh-huh.
Wild. But you would say Olympic trials and my hands would start shaking. And
Mm.
I would just like, it would be like a physical reaction of like, I have to get this goal. And we worked through that. And I think that was one of the biggest pieces for me being able to make it and stay calm and collected during that competition. And the whole concept that we worked through was just like letting go of the outcome. And I think for
Yeah.
most athletes, that is the hardest thing to do in the world, right? Because like you've worked your whole life, your whole career to get to this one defining point. And if you don't get it, everything feels like it was a complete waste of time. And so by like, he asked me the question that I didn't allow anyone to ask me, what happens if you didn't make it? And it was like a shot to my chest. I was like, I think I'm bleeding. Like, how could you ask me that? How could you ask me that? What a crazy question. And like, I mean, if you look back at it, it's like, why is that crazy? Like that, it could happen. I could stub my toe when I walk out of this room after this podcast. It could happen. So like not taking that into consideration is just kind of like you're lying to yourself at some point.
Mhm.
And so being able to deal with, I was still a great athlete regardless. And like the great pieces of this whole journey wasn't necessarily this one tiny competition that defines everything, but all of the practices that led up to it. I went through that. Did you have a similar character arc or like where you had to kind of let go? It sounds like you worked through intense moments, but was it that crazy for you to where you were that uptight?
Yeah, actually, I have like one example more recently with the team in general, is when we were going into Pan Am Games. So we had Worlds before Pan Am's, and we had a great result. We went into Worlds like there's a new scoring system, we have a new team, so we kind of went in like no like pressure or anything on like a certain result. It was like let's go, let's do what we've been doing in training, and we'll see how this new system is working, the scoring system and everything. Like we had no idea how we would end up. We ended up coming home with a silver and a bronze medal, which again were USA's first medals in I think 16 plus years. So results went great. Then it's like, okay, we're going into Pan Am Games. This is our first chance Olympic qualifier. We need to get first. We need gold. This gold medal. We need to first. We need to beat Mexico. We need to beat Canada. And that was all that, not all, but that was huge in our heads. Like we were thinking about that gold medal. I had like the Pan Am gold medal as the background of my phone screensaver at one point. We were doing like those Friday challenges where we would do like competition simulations, but our alternates were swimming before us, and they were pretending to be they were pretending to be like Mexico. So we already knew their routine music. So they played their routine music before us. So it was like we were hearing, so all this stuff was familiar when we got there. And that's like all like we had so much focus on that. And when we got to the competition, everyone's thinking like, oh yeah, not just qualify, but it's like get first, get this gold medal. And then we get there, we didn't get first, we didn't get that medal, we didn't beat Mexico. And then it was like, I remember that moment so much after we finished our last event, walking down that hallway and like everyone just like completely separate. Like we've been a team this whole time, everyone's separate, everyone like sitting on the ground crying, just like separately, like thinking that was our only chance to qualify. And that moment meant everything. And that we just failed completely. Even though like, first of all, we just got a silver medal at Pan Am's, which the last two Pan Am's I've been to were bronze medals. So silver medal's kind of a big deal. Like that's pretty huge. We also just came back from a silver and bronze medal at World Championship. Like so many great things have happened before that. And like all the training, everything we've done with the team to even get to that point was huge. And we were so focused on that goal that like going into Pan Am's was so stressful because we thought that this one competition was our moment. This was like that Olympic trials like shaking thing that you're talking about. Like we would like be freaking out about just thinking about Pan Am's, which is why we did all those like competition simulations and all those things like that to better prepare for that. But then kind of after that happened, we had to have a big team talk. Let's shift our brains going into Doha. So then we had to go back to what worked well in Fukuoka, that was different from Pan Am's. And we're like, Pan Am's, we were completely focused on the other team, the end result, this medal, and the other one, we were working hard every day. We went to the competition and we did what we did every day. We weren't looking at other countries. We weren't worried about their scores, like nothing. We were just focused on ourselves, which is all we can control anyway. And we always, sports is always talking about focus on what you control. That's it. Um, so going into Doha, it was a complete shift. And we're like, yes, obviously we want to qualify for the Olympics, but let's just keep doing what we've been doing at home, training hard every day. When we get to the pool, we kept talking about our bubble. So our team was really focused on staying in our bubble. So it was like, sometimes other teams are swimming and you want to like watch them, or like you want to see the scores and see what place you're in and all this stuff. And we're like, just stay in our bubble, without being like we still know what's going on, but we don't need to know all these other things. We can't control what this team's doing or what the judges are going to score them. So just stay in our little bubble, and that's kind of where we were, and what worked really well for our team. I don't remember if I completely answered your question or not, but
Yeah, yeah, right. It's being able, you even answered, you went back to the chop wood, carry water. It's like at some point, just
yeah,
keep doing what you have been doing at practices and then prolong that. But I do think it's such an interesting, it's so interesting being able to deal with these quote unquote bad situations, or all of the pushback from, let that be a hard comp, or not getting what you want, to learning how to let go of what you want. Like, all of these factors are so important to, and I keep using this example, but like, an athlete's character arc of like how you come up, because
right,
like, again, like the book, it's all about just like learning about yourself as a human. Because like, again, like, take yourself out of the sport, like at the end of the day, like, all we're doing from these things are just like learning about ourselves in life, and like how we travel
right,
through said life. And so
exactly.
it's just, again, like, I've been so intrigued recently with more of the valleys than the peaks,
Mm,
because the peaks are great, but like, again, most people don't learn from the peak. Like, it's exciting, like, yay, I've struggled all the way up to said peak, but like, there's usually not like a lesson there, so it's like, for me, like, it's not as palatable, like
yeah,
being down at the bottom and like not getting an Olympic spot, or getting close to medaling, or wanting first but getting second, which is like a stab to the chest too. It's like, they're so good for being able to like input so much new information about yourself, your team, life itself. um I have a couple of scenarios myself that I've run into that have like really taught me about like
uh-huh,
what I needed to change, and what big flaws and holes in my mind were as an athlete. um
hmm,
do you have a specific one? And I don't know, maybe it'd be better
hmm,
as an individual, because I
hmm,
feel like a team
right,
it can get convoluted, because everyone has their own specific issues they can be going through, which is, again, like, very
right.
interesting for your sport, because there's so many moving pieces that need to be done perfectly. Is there a
Right.
specific scenario to where you kind of like landed on your face and
Yeah.
got to eat from
um
that?
well, I think what you're saying too is like, for me, I feel a lot of this is like every single, like, I've obviously had multiple difficult moments and of those valleys kind of, but as long as you take a little bit from each one, it's like there's never, you never not moving. It's like you may have some downs, you'll have some ups, but if you learn from both of them, you'll always be going forward. And that goes with those high moments also. It's like, yes, they're great, and enjoy them, take them all in, because I think that's important too. I've also had like high moments where, I was so worried about something else that I didn't actually enjoy the celebration part of it, or that exciting moment.
Mm,
um, but being able to learn also from those high moments. So, okay, what did go well? How do we keep that going forward? And then, even in those high moments, there are little things that might have, happened that you can still learn from. So, kind of sidetracking, but I just I've learned over the years that, like, no matter what moments, high or low, you can always be learning something from them to kind of keep moving you forward. And I think for me specifically, I mean, I've had a bunch, but I think one of the main ones, especially more recently, would probably be Budapest 2022, the incident where I passed out, and
Mm.
kind of coming back from that. I wouldn't necessarily like the actual moment of passing out, because I finished my routine, I completed the event and everything. For people who don't know, Worlds 2022, I was competing in the solo event. And at the end of the routine, I lost consciousness, blacked out, and sank to the bottom of the pool. And then my coach dove in to get me, brought me back, and all the medical people were there, and eventually, came back to and was all good. And um, was supposed to compete in the team final the next day, and then ended up getting banned from the rest of the competition, basically. Even though doctors and everyone said I was okay, but it's okay. I think it was for the best, because I've, again, learned from that situation now going forward. But I think, yeah, I think learning from that, it was kind of a confusing one for me, because I was like, what is like my lesson? What am I supposed to be learning from this? Like, not to push myself so hard, that I need to, I don't know, hydrate better, or like, what was the cause of this situation? Is it deeper than that? Is it more like, I mean, emotional, mental, other stuff going on, personal stuff? Is it, things with being able to enjoy the process and the whole competition side? Because at that competition, I felt I was enjoying, but that morning I had another event and I got very serious, like younger Anita mode, because some little thing happened with my headpiece, and I was like, oh, this wasn't perfect. Silly thing. So kind of, I was a little bit confused when, it was a big accident that happened. I obviously needed to come back from that, but I was like, there needs to be something I'm learning from this. And I was like struggling when people would ask me about it. I'm like, what am I supposed to be learning from? They're like, what did you learn from this? Or like, what is whatever? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's supposed to be coming from it. So, um, I think in the end, like, I mean, there are a lot of different things, but I think, the idea of what we already talked about too is just learning to enjoy it all, and not be so serious, with everything all the time, and also to allow myself, this is like very different places, but to remember that I need to kind of take a break sometimes, and not go, full 1000%, 1000% of the time, because I feel like I was just going, and I'd injured my foot earlier that year. I'd done all these things, and I was always like trying to get back as fast as possible, which is good, but I feel like it was like my body telling me, like, you need to take a break. You need to, like, give yourself time, and yes, you can still work hard and do all these things, but take a step back, and look at your life, and enjoy what you're doing, and all this stuff. So, I mean, I don't remember what the main part of your question was, but
Well, just if you've learned from these, that big situation.
from those lows.
I was looking for a specific one, which it sounds like you had a perfect one, because I was going to bring that up at some point too, because
Yeah.
we lightly talked about it last time. And for people that don't know, because from the part one, I had no idea that you passed out, which
Oh
I
yeah, I
thought
remember.
was
You're
funny.
like,
I was
what?
just,
I didn't even hear about this.
yeah. But yeah, so I think that's so interesting too, because when you work through, and it's interesting to see how people work through these problems themselves. For me, like, I have to journal and like get it
Yeah.
out. I need to get it out and then speak about it. And that was like the best
Mhm.
way for me to like process something bad. Is that kind of like a similar process for
I'm
you?
very, very similar. Yeah, I definitely need to like talk about it, like get it out. But I feel like I used to get like frustrated or upset because I couldn't always verbalize things immediately, and I wanted to so bad, and I couldn't put it into words. So then I started writing more and journaling, and I feel like I was able to get like everything out that I needed. It was like more clear for my brain, because when I would go from like brain to mouth, it would just like be all jumbled and like a mess. But when
Yeah.
I could like write it out, and then it was like, okay, I know like what I need to talk about, and then it's like, okay, now I need to talk about it to someone, and I don't always need like an answer or like guidance in that sense. It's just like I need to share, or I need, I need to like let it out, because otherwise I just hold it in and gets all bottled up and everything like that. So yeah, I'm very similar. Writing and then also sharing with someone, speaking about it, has helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another piece, and I'm just going quite philosophical for this whole podcast, but we're just going to ride this wave. But there's a there's a collateral beauty to eating shit, to falling on your face. Like,
Hmm.
again, going back to the character arc thing, like how, and I'm not shitting on this because like China is great at diving and it's so sick, but it's boring to an extent seeing them win every single time. Like there's no change. Like if we played a game of chess and it went the same way every single time, I could probably tell you we'd stop after 3 games. It would just suck. And so like
Yeah.
actually like looking at the process of like, oh, well, you know, the US missed it from 2008 all the way up to this moment. Like how great was that moment? Like how great was that moment? Like feeling that, like that's wild. And that probably even like looking back on it, it might give you a little bit of like tingly sensation on the back of your neck.
Yeah,
But it's like,
for sure.
yeah, like knowing that too. And obviously you weren't in you weren't were you on the team for 2012, that year
No,
that didn't get it? Okay, so it's
no,
like
no.
obviously you want the best for that team, but
Right.
if we look at the whole picture, and if they, even the person that didn't get the Olympic spot, if they could step back and look at the whole timeline, it's kind of cool.
Hmm.
It's kind of cool. It makes it more interesting. Like, how boring would it be? It's like, yeah, like tried and true every single time we get the Olympic spot. You're like, yeah, like wow, you know. But if you sat down and
Yeah.
you're telling your child, like, listen, like 2008 all the way to this moment, years later, and then we got it, and it's like I was a part of that. And even if you weren't a
Right.
part of that, you're like, how sick was that we finally got that Olympic spot that we were fighting for? And so it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm more in a philosophical state because like you start to look at like the fragility of life, and you can even take that into athletics. And it's like you want an interesting, fun story. Like you could
Hmm.
even take it to like a movie. If we were watching Lord of the Rings and you instantaneously knew that like the ring sucked and you know things were gonna like happen poorly, but it went perfectly for said one character, that sucks. That's like no one would watch that movie. And
Yeah.
so it's like almost looking back at these experiences that we've had, like you almost want a little bit of dirt on your shoe.
Definitely. Yeah. 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 I mean, everything you said, like completely agree. And the qualification was huge. Um, I mean, because it's been since 2008, and because I've seen the process of everything over the years. I started, my first national team was in 2013. Um, so these past 10 years, 10 plus years, you know, I was in it when we were down. You know, I was in it when we were barely making finals in 12th, 13th place. Um, you know, and then kind of saw us crawl back up a little bit, and people come, people leave. And so it's been really cool. I feel like, reflecting from my perspective, just the past 10 years, because and before that, even since 2008, because '08 was when I was at home watching, you know, and that like Olympic spark started, was watching the games in '08, the last time the team was there. And then kind of going, I went to 2012 Olympic trials. I was like 14, and you know, knew I wasn't going to make it, but I qualified, so I was like, let's go for experience. um and so like seeing that team and kind of being there and watching them not qualify and just the duet go, and then, you know, making my first Olympics and just missing out in Tokyo with the team. So kind of like being there for through the thick and thin of, you know, the past 10 years, it made that day of qualifying so much more special. Um and yeah, like you said, it's like it would be boring. Like I probably still wouldn't be here if I joined in 2013 and we were, you know, just like consistently winning, but like not doing anything cool, like, or, you know, great. I probably wouldn't be here still, because you know, I'd be like, all right, I have my Olympics done, I have my medals done, like, all right, like move on with life, you know. But I've stuck with it because there's been so many ups and downs, and um, just stories that I've been a part of. And my coach and I joke all the time. Every time like something crazy happens, we're like, oh, there's another chapter for our book. Like we always talk about, you know, we're gonna write a book one day. because so much stuff happens. Like we could write, I'll tell all of our stories and it would create a massive book. Um, and like you said too, like all of these things that I'm learning over these years, like yes, I'm dialed in and focused on this sport, but everything is preparing me for life and more than just the sport itself. And last thing I'll touch on that too is being a part of this is like, yes, we've been working to get back to the Olympics with the team, to get back on the podium with the team. But even more than that, I feel like I've been a part of changing the sport over the past, 10 years. And our team has really pushed to be game changers and to challenge the system and to, you know, keep pushing the sport forward. And I feel like we've definitely done that in a number of ways now. And so now to have done that, but now also be seeing the results coming, is super cool, because that's just like a cherry on top, the results and qualifying and getting world medals. Like, yeah, that's super cool, but being able to make, inspire the young swimmers and, change the way the sport is going and make it more popular, just getting the sport more well known and things like that. Like, that's really the cool part.
Yeah.
And yeah, the medals are cool too, but
Yeah.
just little sprinkles on top.
Now, we touched on this last time, and I wasn't meaning to save this for last, but I guess it just coincidentally happened because, side tangents and all that fun stuff. But
Yeah.
we talked about the idea, and it falls into the idea of perfection. And so a lot of athletes fall into this idea of perfection. Everything has to be perfect, has to look perfect. And so that ends up trickling down into the body image side of things. And I really wanted to retouch on this because, again, guys, we talked about this on the last podcast, and I thought it was such a cool concept to talk about because, one, I don't really hear it being talked about that often. And it kind of gets, like it's a touchy subject. And even funny enough, this is the hard part, right? Because we're trying to bypass eating disorders, right? But we've gotten to a point that even our dietitians that we work with are constrained from talking about either eating healthier or being able to tell someone like, hey, like you're going too far, or too far either in the, too much weight or too little.
Yeah.
And it's hard though, because in the pool, specifically like you guys, and I guess it's pretty similar, we're very close to being naked. I've got just a little bit of, cloth covering everything.
A little cloth, yeah.
And it's interesting though, because it really does seep down farther than you think. And I never thought not to say that I necessarily do deal with it, but you walk by mirrors differently. And I've always, am I looking lean enough? Is this, and it is a question that hits you. And so you don't necessarily have to have a problem, but there's always those tendencies start to poke. And obviously this gets harder with like TikTok and Instagram, and obviously like everyone's comparing everything. Well, that person looks jacked as crap, or he's super lean or whatever. And again, like we look at your sport where you're judged on every little minute thing, from how your fingers are being pointed and how the hair flicks and all of these things. How have you been able to manage kind of staying sane in that realm?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a challenge, and I think it's very real. It's there in anyone, and it doesn't need to be like you said, like you're not to the extreme, but you walk by mirrors differently, or like you're looking at yourself in the video, like so everyone has those thoughts and feelings, and I think one thing that we're lacking is just talking about it, like you said. If you can be more comfortable with your team or with your coach or whoever to talk about it in a healthy way, and not just like all this negative talk. Like when there's a lot of like negative talk about body image within the team, like it you start to like feed into that, and you start to hear it, and it starts to like you start to think that way and look that way at yourself in the video or in the mirror. And yeah, we're in a sport, you know, it's an artistic sport. We're judged on our lines and our image basically, even though it's not necessarily points for that, but it's in the judge's mind whether you like it or not. Um, so I think one thing is like talking about it, being more open about it. A couple of years ago, our head coach kind of opened up that conversation with our team one time and was like, "Let's talk about it," because she was a athlete herself. She's an Olympian. She's been there, and now she's coaching, and she doesn't want to coach from a point of fear where, you know, the athletes fear eating around her or, you know, walking out in the swimsuit in front of her because they think she's judging her. So she wanted to kind of open that up, like, let's be transparent, let's be honest with each other, like, let's share our struggles because we're all dealing with them, but we all hold them into ourselves and just struggle even more, you know. So one thing was opening that up and kind of just talking about it, I think, is super important because it is pushed down a lot because it can be a sensitive topic, but I think it's important to talk about those things, you know.
Yeah.
And second thing is focusing more on performance than look over anything. And this is another thing that um, I've learned from our head coach also is like, you know, I want you to perform your best. I want you to feel your best. I want you to be recovered every day. And yes, like we should take care of our bodies and eat nutritious foods and make sure we're fueling ourselves properly. But I'm not saying you need to eat healthier. You need to eat more veggies because I want you to be thinner or to look more lean. Like I'm telling you to eat properly these good foods because I want you to feel better. I want you to perform better and I want you to, you know, recover properly, like all these things. So if we can shift our focus to, you know, fueling for optimal performance rather than the look or, you know, what weight, what number is going to be on the scale or whatever, um, it can really kind of take away that stress on you. Which then in the end, you know, your body responds and reacts to that also, and you will, you know, have a leaner look where you feel strong in the water and you can perform at your best and you're sleeping well because your body's focusing on recovering and not just breaking down the fast food or candy or whatever you ate. Like it's actually can focus on, you know, putting its energy into your muscles recovering and things like that. So I think in my mind, like thinking about shifting your mind to focusing on what I need to do for my performance for the best, you know, to have the best performance and to feel my best rather than, okay, how do I need to look, you know? And then for the rest, like, we don't care. Like, doesn't matter how you look. If you're going to perform your best, if you're going to be working hard and you're going to be high out of the water and, you know, straight on your spins or whatever, like, that's what we want. So, yeah, I think that's what's helped me a lot, and what's helped in our team culture also. I've been on teams in the past where you feel a lot of that negative energy and talk around body image and everyone individually criticizing their own bodies or talking behind someone's back about, oh, you know, this person came back from break looking like this or whatever. And it's like if you can just eliminate all of that, I mean, way less toxic, not a toxic environment, first of all. Second of all, it's like, okay, you can just focus on having the best performance that you can. So
Yeah, it is interesting to hear because I've run into the situation a few times. It's interesting to hear a teammate without even noticing it. They will say something that's kind of like attacking how they look,
hmm
and so like you have that choice to either like address it in just a nonchalant way, which I feel like usually works the best. Of like, well, hey, like, you know, you look great, you're lean, like you're fine, like do you feel good? Or you can kind of like just hit it head on, which sometimes you're like, you know, are you good? Is everything all right? And like those
yeah.
conversations obviously are kind of hard because they're predicated on a solid foundation of like a friendship.
hmm
And so sometimes it's kind of harder to like watch someone go through that, especially if you don't have that base of friendship. And so
Right.
I think that's the important part of like being connected, having the team connected with a sports psychologist and making sure
hmm
the team is overall healthy and, you know, actually working on their mind. Because even if you're not, I mean, we talk about journaling because I think it's so important just to get these thoughts out of your head. Because then, like, if you can
Right.
see what you were thinking and stare at it at a page and be like, wow, that's horrible. Like that makes no sense, and two, it's like just backwards thinking. And so I think being
Right.
able to find healthy pieces and stuff like that, like you said, like really making sure there's good healthy conversation behind all of that is
Mm-hmm.
quite an interesting piece. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Yes.
It's a journey that, again, a part of, and I think it's important because you get it hyper blasted at you in athletics, because especially in our sports, you've got a camera on you, you have no clothing, and then you are literally being judged on what you are doing. I mean, essentially on the look of what you do. Does it look high
Right.
performance? Are you doing these things X, Y, or Z to the best ability 10? Because you kind of like, there's that inherent like look, oh, well, if you look better, it's going to be scored better. And so it's like
Right.
trying to deal with all of those pieces and really make sure that's like, if this is doing okay with all of that, because that is another burden that can just be weighing you down.
Right.
But yeah, I think, again, sports psych is great, and I'm only assuming that you guys have been able to like integrate a lot with that. And I don't know if you've had like, is it better to, do you think it would be better to have a team conversation in that aspect, or more just individually work that out with the sports psych?
As far as like the body image stuff goes, you mean?
Yeah,
I think both.
both.
I think definitely individually, because everyone has their own individual like demons and things they're battling with, right?
Right.
So it is good to talk about that. But I think if I think it depends. Like if you feel it becoming like a toxic energy and within your team, like you notice a lot of people outwardly verbalizing like comments about themselves or talking about someone else, and it's become like there's that negative like
And
idea around it within the team.
yeah,
I think it's great to have that conversation with the team, because then everyone can share, and then too, like, okay, I'm not the only one thinking this about myself, like people are thinking about themselves too, like how can we help each other, and sometimes maybe you'll find that one buddy who's thinks the same like negative thoughts as you do about yourselves, and then you can kind of help each other, like when you're thinking that, like maybe you can say something like good about each other, or whatever else could like make it help you like shift out of that moment. Outside of like body image, I mean, I have those moments. I have a teammate who I can turn to when I feel myself going in like like a more like serious focused like negative place, and I'll look to her like, oh, I'm getting really frustrated with this, whatever, and then she'll say, oh, me too, and then we'll easily like make a quick joke, and like it just completely changes it around. So finding someone, whether that's a teammate, whether it's a coach, or sports psych friend, family, whatever, who can kind of help you out of those times, and almost hold you accountable for being that like negative voice in your own head, I think is great.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I love that. We didn't hit a lot of topics that we did last time. Let that be your guys' training, strength training, breath work stuff, mobility and flexibility, which I'm obsessed with. So I'll probably have to force you to come back on for part two.
part three.
Part three, realistically, part three. But I thought that was a super fun conversation. I think, whoever's watching could get a lot out of that. But I'm excited to watch you guys, no matter what, at the Olympics, and see this character arc keep moving onward and upward. So
Yes.
yeah, thank you for joining, and I guess we'll have to pull you on for part three
All
again.
right. Sounds good.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
yeah, people, thanks for watching, and we'll catch ya next week.